Buenas tardes a todos y bienvenidos a este webinar Let's Talk About Bullying, que vamos a celebrar desde el Centro Clínica para el Estudio y Prevención de la Delincuencia de la Universidad Miguel Hernández de Elche, que coordina la profesora Cordelia Estevez y también la profesora Naikari Sánchez Herrero. Para mí es un auténtico placer y un honor como director del Centro Clínica pues estar aquí con todos ustedes para asistir a este interesante webinar y compartir además con colegas tan prestigiosos y con todo el público interesado este tiempo. La verdad es que para el Centro Clínica, el estudio del bullying y de los fenómenos asociados a él, muy en particular en relación con los fenómenos relacionados, digamos, con su realización en el ciberespacio, ha sido una prioridad casi desde el principio, desde el nacimiento. El Centro Clínica es un centro todavía muy joven, pese a bueno, su reconocimiento, y casi desde el principio, como digo, empezamos trabajando estos temas. La primera vez que empezamos a trabajarlo desde una perspectiva científica fue en relación con un proyecto de investigación que se llamaba CiberApp, con la Diputación Provincial de Alicante, que dio lugar para una guía de uso seguro de Internet. Allí no se analizaba solo el bullying, pero era efectivamente el ciberbullying y conductas relacionadas con el bullying, tanto en el espacio físico como en el ciberespacio, se analizaban también. Después hemos llevado a cabo y llevamos a cabo el protocolo SAFE de uso seguro de Internet para la Junta de Castilla y León, que estaba relacionado también con el bullying, con algunas conductas de riesgo relacionadas con el uso de los nuevos dispositivos. Y sobre todo en los últimos años, desde hace 4 o 5 años, con la incorporación de la profesora Cordelia Estevez, también con la puesta en marcha de la spin-off CARES, hemos seguido trabajando esta línea y hemos elaborado, desarrollado e implementado pues, un programa integral digamos, el tratamiento del acoso escolar llamado GIROS, un programa pues que esencialmente trata de mejorar las competencias emocionales de los menores para ayudarles a resolver situaciones de acoso escolar, un programa integral que consta de un programa psicoeducativo, etcétera, etcétera, y además sigue siendo una de nuestras prioridades en cuanto a líneas de investigación. Por todo ello, pues decidimos poner en marcha este seminario, también porque el mismo se publicará posteriormente después, aparte de la gente que tiene la suerte de asistir a él en streaming, después lo publicaremos en la revista de divulgación científica Post-C, que es una revista sobre crimen, ciencia y sociedad que hemos abierto, intentando hacer pues, un tipo de divulgación científica que mezcle, digamos, el rigor científico con, por otra parte, también la divulgación para que todo el mundo sepa las distintas acciones que se vienen realizando por parte de muchos investigadores, y en el seno de esa idea es en el que se realizan estas jornadas. Tenemos el inmenso honor y la inmensa suerte de contar con investigadores que vienen trabajando en esta materia desde hace mucho tiempo y además de forma enormemente exitosa, mezclando investigación y transferencia, haciendo lo mejor que sabe hacer la universidad, que es encontrar diagnósticos a problemas y buscar soluciones a los mismos, problemas además como el bullying, que como todos sabemos pues nos conciernen a todos. Así que yo quiero terminar dando las gracias a los ponentes, a los magníficos ponentes, al doctor Samer Hinduja, que es profesor en the School of Criminology and Criminal Justice a Florida Atlantic University, él es codirector del Cyberbullying Research Center y bueno, es por todos conocido como uno de los grandes autores, pese a su juventud, uno de los grandes, los 4, por cierto, voy a decir pese a su juventud, y no porque crea que nadie se me podría ofender, sino porque ciertamente son investigadores muy jóvenes y sin embargo con una trayectoria dilatadísima. Así que en este caso, thank you Samir for being here with us, es un honor para nosotros. También participará el profesor Juan Manuel Machimbarrena, que es del Departamento de Psicología Clínica e Investigación o Metodología de la Investigación de la Universidad del País Vasco. Muchísimas gracias, Juan Manuel, como digo, también un investigador de máximo prestigio, al que le agradezco personalmente que esté aquí con nosotros. Y también participa con nosotros la profesora Paloma Viejo, perdón, me la he saltado, que es profesora e investigadora en el National Anti-Bullying Research and Resource Center of Dublin City University. Paloma, ¿lo he dicho bien? Muchísimas gracias por estar también con nosotros aquí, una investigadora muy reconocida en el tema. Y finalmente nos acompaña ni más ni menos que la profesora Maria Totfi, que ella es profesora de Criminología de la Universidad de Cambridge, directora del programa de doctorado del Instituto de Criminología, si no el más prestigioso Instituto de Criminología del mundo, uno de ellos, de la Universidad de Cambridge. Un auténtico honor, María, que estés con nosotros, una experta investigadora en muchas materias, pero también y especialmente en esta. Así que muchas gracias a todos ellos por estar aquí, muchas gracias a los asistentes por compartir su tiempo con nosotros, y sin más le cedo la palabra a bueno, pues la auténtica organizadora y directora del evento, que es la profesora Cordelia Estevez. Muchas gracias. Cordelia, cuando quieras.
Thank you, Fernando. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody. Good morning, Profesor Hinduja. Welcome to this webinar. Bienvenidos todos. Fernando, thank you for your support, for your work always. And also thank you to Naikari. His work is absolutely necessary. It's invisible now, but it's basic for the developer of this webinar. For us, like Professor Fernando Miró has said, it's a pride and it's a pleasure to have you here sharing your knowledge, your experience with us in bullying and cyberbullying. And I think I don't have much more to say after Professor Miró, but only thanks again to all of our speakers, because when we asked for you to come here, immediately you said you want to come with us to share. So we are very, very happy and grateful for this. Thank you very much. I don't want to take more time of Professor Hinduja. He will start with the first communication. And I only want to remind you that you can make the question you want or you need at the end of the communication. When Professor Hinduja finishes, you will ask through the application you have, Q&A application, or with your hand icon, and Naikari will give you the word. Okay? It's everything. So please, Professor Hinduja, when you want, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Cordelia. I'm very grateful to be on this panel with such distinguished individuals, and I hope that everyone in attendance finds our time together useful. I only have a limited amount of time to share with you all the things that I would want to share with you, so I may not get into a specific topic or subtopic that you'd like me to explore. With that said, I hope that you know, and the panelists will confirm this, I'm very willing to help in any way that I can. That's my heart, to be able to be a resource to anyone. So please don't hesitate to reach out to me. I can get you the research papers you might be looking for. If you want to use one of our instruments, survey instruments, I'm happy to get them to you. I'm sure the rest of our colleagues would be able to say the same thing. You don't need to exhaust yourself if there's something that's already at our fingertips. So please just go ahead and ask us, and we'll get you whatever it is that you need. I thank you that you care about bullying and cyberbullying and some of these other issues that we'll be talking about. There is so much work to be done. And I hope that you're inspired on a personal level and on a professional level to really make a difference if you continue down this pathway where you're able to study these phenomenon as we move forward. And again, we're here to help you. You could consider us, elder statesmen and stateswomen. We would want to come alongside you and support you in any way that we can, because other people have supported us along the way in our own journeys. So with that, I am pleased to switch over to my slides and we'll get started. And I look forward to your Q&A. Feel free to type them in the chat window or raise your hand a little bit later and we will get into your questions. So just bear with me for 10 seconds. Okay, and let me go ahead and minimize this little floating window of controls so it doesn't block our slides. All right, so again, please reach out to me if you need anything. My contact information is up there. I'll also give that to you at the end. Let's get started. First off, I think about all the various sorts of apps and games and platforms which have gained popularity in the last handful of years. Maybe you would pride yourself on knowing all of these icons. Starting from the top left, we have Marco Polo, Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat or Snap. In the middle row, we have House Party, we have YouTube, we have WhatsApp, which everyone uses, of course. We have Twitch, and the bottom row, as you all probably know, is Discord, PlayStation Network, Xbox Live, and TikTok, which has exploded in popularity over the last 12 to 18 months. So when it comes to these different sorts of apps and games and platforms, each of you can choose to study these individually if you would like. You can try to identify public messages or public content that you can then download or data scrape or web scrape and then be able to analyze en masse. You can also do surveys of different individuals and try to figure out what platforms they're using. But when I think about misuse of technology, what I first like to point out is that technology is good. There's lots of positives. It meets our educational needs. It meets our social, our relational needs. It meets our communication needs. It meets our entertainment needs when we are bored. And we like the diversion. So there's a lot of positives. Media in my country, we focus a lot on the negatives, which is a shame because again, I want everyone to think about the positives and think about how we can equip our young people and college students, etc., to be able to dominate life, really, because they've developed a level of skill set and proficiency and expertise with various apps and platforms. So that's one thing. And then secondly, what I want to bring up is the vast majority of youth are actually doing the right things on these apps and platforms. They are not being trolls. They are not rage quitting and causing other people grief through threatening messages and abusive posts. Most of them are doing the right thing, but there's always going to be a small proportion which misuses the technology. And of course, we'll talk about that today. But let's not forget the big picture. And the big picture is technology is largely used positively, respectfully, or at least in neutral ways. Last summer, we studied tweens. Tweens are an understudied population. Tweens could be considered 9 to 12-year-olds. Many individuals study teens, but we were excited to finally get an idea of what was going on amongst younger students. And so if I direct your attention to the second and the fourth group of bars in this very simplistic chart, you see that it's about 1 out of 8 tweens, 9 to 12-year-olds across the United States have been cyberbullied, and about 1 out of 18, 1 out of 19 have cyberbullied somebody else. So it's occurring to a small proportion. You can see with the first group and the fourth group of bars that school-based bullying still occurs with much greater frequency and prevalence. So I still think, of course, we need to focus on that, but I also get the sense that more and more parents are introducing their kids to devices at a younger and younger age. And with that comes the opportunity or possibility for them to be exposed to cyberbullying or for them to be an aggressor towards other people, just as a reference point. What I also thought was interesting amongst this population of quite young kids, 9 to 12-year-olds, of those who were cyberbullied, you see that it deeply affected their feelings about themselves. And so we're talking about their self-esteem, their self-worth. So, emotional, psychological problems, and then friendships, of course, socially and relationally, and then physical health. So that's a big deal. We don't want cyberbullying to be affecting youth physical health, but we know that this is a reality. This is just what the major genders. We did collect some data from those who were transgender, and we can give you that information if you would like later. I'll have to look it up. But the bottom line is that we have tweens, and they are being cyberbullied to a small amount, but when they are cyberbullied, it is affecting them in different sorts of ways, and those ways are significant. We have studied teens for a number of years. We'll be collecting more data this year, so in the next couple of months. This data is a little bit older. It's from 2019. I know that just a couple of years, it feels like a lifetime when we're talking about these online phenomena, but just bear with me, and I look forward to eventually getting you some comparison numbers later this year, hopefully summertime. But when we're talking about school-based bullying, just as a reference point here in America, this nationally representative study, we see that it's about 3 out of 4 have been bullied at school in their lifetime. And if you look at the fourth group of bars in this very simple chart, it's about 1 out of 3 say that they have bullied somebody else. So just a reference point. When we look at cyberbullying, again, it's occurring a lot less frequency in prevalence. 1 out of 4 have been cyberbullied over their lifetime, and about 1 in 7, 1 in 8 have cyberbullied others in their lifetime. So I want to remind educators, parents, youth serving adults, even though cyberbullying tends to make the headlines in the media, don't neglect school-based bullying, but of course still pay attention to cyberbullying, and that's what we're going to talk about for the rest of my time together here. It's also important to point out that over half, at least in our research, of the students who dealt with cyberbullying said it deeply affected their ability to learn and feel safe at school. Now, some well-meaning adults, they're a little bit dismissive, and they say to youth who might come to them for help when they're being cyberbullied or otherwise abused online, hey, stop being on your phone so often. Hey, just delete that app. Just stop playing that game and you won't be dealing with this problem. But that's very dismissive. It doesn't make the problem go away. And additionally, we're seeing that it's affecting them in many spheres, as we know, emotionally, psychologically, behaviorally, and of course, physiologically. Just a couple of quick other data points, if you don't mind. We see a strong overlap. What I mean by this is that of those students who were bullied at school in the last 30 days, 85% as compared to 15% were also bullied online. So we have this population which is doubly susceptible to victimization offline and online. And so as a researcher and as an upcoming researcher or a student, I think you should ask yourself the question, my goodness, what is going on here? Why do we have this population which seems to be attracting victimization? Not, of course, they're not to blame. We know that. Nothing that they have done deserves to be harassed or deserves for them to be targeted. But the question is, what is leading to them being bullied both offline and online? Is there some sort of unique characteristic? Is it a specific unique population? How can we specifically target them for attentional support, maybe resources, attention? In the same breath, I want to say that of those who bully others at school, 60% as compared to 40% also bully others online. So here again, if I'm a researcher thinking this through, we have a population of aggressors who are mean, cruel. They're acting like a jerk to people, regardless of the environment. There again, what is with this population? Do they need additional support, whether it's conflict resolution training, anger management training, emotional regulation training? Are they dealing with certain stresses at home, which might need to be addressed because those stresses are now manifesting in negative coping mechanisms, such as being harmful towards other people? Maybe, but these are the sorts of things that we like to think about because we're trying to get to the bottom of this issue so we can reduce its prevalence. Okay, so the rest of our time together, I want to talk about climate. I think a lot about climate because I think the best way to reach students is in schools. Now, you might say we should be reaching them at homes. You know, the parents, the grandparents, the guardians, they have a role to play. And yes, they absolutely do. But it's kind of hard to control what's going on in a household. We don't know their situation. We can't mandate something. But in schools, we can mandate policy. We can mandate programming. So I love to think about schools as a really good answer for some of these problems. So when I think about school climate, first let me say that individuals like you and me, we have personalities. So if you were to think about my personality, I would say that I'm quite sensitive, I'm very introverted, I'm quite cerebral, I'm always in my head, which is sometimes a problem, many times a problem. But that's just me, that's my personality. You have your own personality. Well, individuals have personalities, but organizations like a university or like a school or like a business, they have climates. And a climate is this constellation of various sorts of elements or stars, let's say. So we have connectedness, we have belongingness, we have pure respect, we have school safety, we have school spirit, we have morale from teachers or morale among teachers, morale among students. All of these elements coming together, coalescing, that's climate. And climate in the research has been so profoundly linked to when you increase the climate in schools, you have better academic achievement, you have better attendance, you have lower truancy or skipping school, you have higher morale, and you have less behavioral problems. In our research, we found that a better climate in schools leads to less bullying, less cyberbullying, less sexting. So I wanted to try to move forward with regard to this line of inquiry. And so let me first tell you about parenting styles. And you might have already learned about this, but just forgive me for 1 minute while I summarize it. There's been some really cool research done over the last 50 plus years. And scholars such as Diana Baumrind, Makobi and Martin from 1983, they were able to, over the course of time, identify 2 major dimensions of parenting. So if you're a parent, you might think about these yourselves. And if you are going to be a parent down the road, also think about it. First is disciplinary structure, and second is emotional support and warmth. So again, 2 major dimensions of parenting. Disciplinary structure simply means, do you have rules in your household? Do you have expectations? Do you have high expectations and you believe that your kids will rise up to those expectations? Do you have various sorts of structure, or is it just sort of chaotic and wild? So that's disciplinary structure. On the other hand, we have emotional support and warmth. This is so intuitive. It simply means you love your kids, you're very warm, you're compassionate, you care deeply about them, you demonstrate unconditional support, etc. So these researchers, they identified 4 sort of, I guess I would say, types of parenting based on these 2 dimensions. First is neglectful parenting. You have low disciplinary structure, no rules or weak rules, not really in expectations, weak expectations, but you also have very low warmth, very low support. And then you have permissive parenting, where you have high warmth and support, but low on, again, expectations, rules, structure. Authoritarian parenting is where you have high expectations, high rules, very strict, focused parenting, etc., but you're very low on warmth. But then these researchers said that the best type of parenting is authoritative parenting. Of course, you have high warmth, high love and support, etc., and then high discipline. Yes, we love you very much, but you have got to follow the rules, and you have to participate in our family and rise up to the expectations we have set. That's the best type of parenting. So there's been some basic incipient research in this area, and I wanted to try to follow up with it with my colleague Justin Patchen. So we thought this has got to be applicable to school climates. And the best type of school climate seemingly would be authoritative school climate. High disciplinary structure, high emotional support and warmth from the teachers, administrators, counselors, mental health professionals, nurses, anyone at school. And by and large, that's what we found. In schools where they were permissive or neglectful, you had a lot more bullying and cyberbullying. Whereas in schools that were authoritative, and also, to be honest, authoritarian, at least a little bit, we saw that there was less bullying and cyberbullying. Also, we wanted to look at school safety. And what we found is that students feel the most safe in schools that were authoritative. So as just a take-home point, we must remember that let's try to build authoritative school climates. And so we'll spend the rest of our time together thinking about that. So let's get into strategies and solutions. I just want to give you some things to think about. There's much work that needs to be done in this area. Perhaps some of my colleagues on this panel are working on it, and they've done incredible, exceptional research. And so you should definitely be locked into what they're saying when they share. But let me just give you some ideas, and maybe you'll think, I love that. That really resonates with me. Or I could have used that when I was growing up and going through my primary school or my secondary school, because that would have really helped me to avoid being bullied or cyberbullied, etc. First off, there hasn't been much research, but there's been a little done on the role of anti-bullying clubs. This is one club that I work with called It Takes One. I love that idea because it just takes one person to stand up for what's right. And of course, it's difficult, but it just takes one person. And then other people might follow. So we want to get our students to try to grow in their leadership abilities so that when they see injustice, they're able to call it out and they're able to stand against it in different sorts of ways. And by one person, it's hard, but if you have a group of people as part of a club, then it gets a little bit more easier. And these clubs have been useful to help build a positive school climate by setting the tone of behavioral expectations and social norms, of coming up with cool, fun ideas to get other students on board, to promote kindness and positivity. And so this is something that has borne some fruit. We would like to see more research done on it to identify what elements within a club make it most valuable. I also think about the idea of what I would call purposed pairing, where you're very intentional about partnering a couple of students. Let's say a 5th grader with a 1st grader, or an 8th grader with a 6th grader, or a 12th grade standard with 9th grade standard, something like that. But then the older student is showing the younger student the standards, the expectations. It's not an adult who is annoying and just seems to be lecturing to them or preaching to them. It's another cool, hopefully, kid showing them what the expectations are. Meanwhile, the younger kid then now has a point of contact whenever they experience any bullying or harassment or stresses at school. They have an older friend who they can go to serve as a mentor, with the older student being the mentee or shepherding the younger student. And this is so good for peer relationships, for connectedness, for belongingness, because it feels like you belong to at least one friendship. And that, of course, can be expanded across a whole school. I also think about the idea of student advisory boards. Again, student advisory boards. In many schools, you have a number of adults, principals, counselors, and they get together and they talk about policies and programming. Now, that's wonderful. But how much more wonderful would it be if we create a group or an advisory panel or group only made up of students? They will feel so empowered. They will feel like their voice matters because they have a say about the policies and the programming to build climate in a school. And the best thing is that their ideas will be the most relevant, the most compelling, the most powerful, the ones that will actually work. Because many times adults have good ideas, but they're considered very lame or uncool with the students. We know this from experience. So we should create these student advisory boards, and then research must be done in order to identify how valuable they can be. But anecdotally, I'm seeing that they are valuable. I also think about the various skills that our students have themselves when they come into a school. Many students, like myself, grew up in theater. Paloma, you might know this, but James, James, our colleague over at Dublin City University in the Anti-Bullying Center, he also grew up in musical theater, much like myself. And so we have that commonality. I love musicals. I love show tunes and soundtracks, etc. I love that so much. So I grew up in theater, which means that I had some skills when it comes to drama. But I feel like schools should tap into the skills of their students, and they should ask all of the students in theater or drama to come up with some sort of play or musical or skit related to some of these issues that we're talking about, such as bullying or cyberbullying or dating abuse, which I think that Manu is going to talk about, etc. Just come up with some sort of role-playing scenario or skit and then present that to the students. And that could be so very compelling in order to get those students to realize, wow, this is an important issue. I should care about this. This actually matters. If you have adults who come up with some sort of skit, it is probably going to fail. It's probably going to be laughed at. So again, enlist students with their skill sets. Similarly, I also grew up in dance, tap and ballet and hip hop. Maybe some of you grew up in dance as well. So there's just another skill that educators need to tap into when it comes to these students. Whatever grade they're in, they can come up with, for example, a flash mob. And if you just go onto Google or YouTube and you type in anti-bullying or anti-cyberbullying flash mob or lip dub, LIPDUB, you'll find so many examples of students who choreograph some amazing dance performance, and then they're able to just randomly, surprisingly, perform it in the cafeteria, in the lunchroom, in the gymnasium, when all the students are not really paying attention, but then all of a sudden they pay attention and their minds are blown and they're like, my goodness, what's going on here? But that gives these students a platform on which to speak about an issue that is very dear to their hearts, like kindness or positivity or empathy or resilience, something like that. I also think it's so valuable for all of our students to have meaningful connections with at least one educator at the school. This has been shown in the research to be so valuable as well. Believe it or not, actually, you'll believe this. Students, when they're looking for help, they will first turn to the school before they turn to parents. So as they get older, of course. So that's really cool. And it puts us as educators in a very valuable position to help these students. As long as we're trained, as long as we know how to sensitively address their issues and struggles. So if I go into any school and I grab one of the students and I say, hello there, if you're struggling in any way at home with your grades and exams, with a romantic relationship, with something on WhatsApp or a group chat or on a game, tell me, who would you go to here at the school and talk to? And hopefully very quickly a name pops in their head. And if it doesn't, we've identified a deficiency which we must correct. We must correct it. Over the years, we have had more and more students do kindness initiatives. And this also needs to be empirically measured, although it's a little bit tricky. I think you will agree with me when I say that it is not enough for students to not do the wrong things. It's not enough. We actually need them to do the right things, the kind things, the compassionate things. So how can we promote this? Can we use social media? Can we have cool contests? We must continue to do this because I think that will help our students develop a track record or a habit of looking for opportunities to be a blessing in other people's lives. At my university, Florida Atlantic University, we have used Facebook for a number of years. We have this HC, which stands for Honors College Compliments page, and it's all anonymous. And you can see that I was featured on it almost 8 years ago. And this page still exists. The graduating students pass it on to the next group of students to give shout outs or compliments to various other students and sometimes faculty like myself. So I love it. This is just great because it's just another simple way to promote positivity. And this is being studied. More and more kindness initiatives are helping to create a more positive school environment. Pledges have been studied as well. Anti-bullying pledges. Pledges are actually useful in some contexts. The research shows very clearly that if you get some students to sign a pledge that they will not overdrink or drink too much alcohol on prom night, you know, the very formal dance, let's say in the school year, then we have less accidents, we have less problems. It has been shown in research to be valuable. So when it comes to bullying pledges, it could prove valuable as well, but we also know that many people could just agree to pledge because of peer pressure. But we want our students to make sure they understand the weight and the gravity of what they're pledging to. They have to understand that this is my commitment. This means something. I'm attaching my name to it. And so hopefully then it decreases the frequency of their participation. I also like to think about how are educators interacting with students outside of the school walls. And I don't just mean with COVID, we're now using Zoom or WebEx or Skype or whatever. I mean, let's say after COVID, when things get better, how are we interacting with our students? What I have found is that from my own experience, I play sports with my students. I play soccer or football. I play ultimate frisbee, which I absolutely love. It's my favorite sport. And so what I have noticed is that on the sports field, they are much willing to talk to me about their lives. They're much willing to open up to me. Plus, I can be bold and I can ask them meaningful questions about their life. I can say, hey, what's going on? How are you making it through your college life? Do you feel a lot of pressure to get A's? Do you feel a lot of pressure to know what you want to do when you graduate? Etc. And then they open up to me because it's this open-ended time. It's this laid-back time of sports, not a controlled environment like a classroom. And I kid you not, I have been invited to multiple weddings just because I befriended students and they felt comfortable with me and they knew that I care about them on the sports fields. Even students I've never had in my class, but only from sports. My point is, educators need to build relationships intentionally with youth, with students outside of the classroom. We have also seen schools come up with contests, create an anti-bullying poster, come up with a anti-bullying PSA, public service announcement. Here's another one. You can find so many of these if you're looking for examples on YouTube. Here's one devoted to teen dating violence. Here's one devoted to sexting. So the point is that this has been very, very useful. Many students actually participate, which might be a shock to you, but students love contests, especially when you get local businesses to donate good prizes, not lame prizes, but good prizes. This has been, I've worked with many schools that have done this, and it's been very powerful. We have had these contests like posters and videos, but we've also had spoken word poetry. We've had t-shirt logo contests. We have had PowerPoint presentation contest. Believe it or not, many students participate. And then you make a grand event in the evening. You have snacks, you have drinks, you have a local celebrity come to serve as the MC or the host. You give out the prizes. And then at the same time, very strategically, you also reach the parents who have come to see whether their child will win a prize. I'm a big fan of project-based learning, especially when it comes to digital citizenship. On our website, we have a number of activities, our top 10 activities related to promoting positive digital citizenship. Digital citizenship is increasingly being studied through data, through research. I've posted some of our research on our blog related to digital citizenship. There's been great research out of David Finkelhor's group in the University of New Hampshire and a few other scholars. This research is small in terms of the scope or in terms of how much it is, the frequency, but we need much more research in this area. I also like activities to work with our students. My colleague, Dr. Kristen Matheson, came up with these flashcards. Would you rather drop your phone in a dirty toilet or drop it from the highest point of a roller coaster? Would you rather have your face turned into a video game character or have your picture become the hottest meme on the internet? So the point here is that we want adults who might feel uncomfortable talking about technology and social media to take the time to have these conversations with students. I don't want any adult to feel afraid. I want them to just use these flashcards, for example, to stimulate conversation. And when you stimulate conversation about the positives, you can also then talk about some of the negatives. And the students will carry the conversation. They have so much to say because this is their lives. I also think about orientation day. Orientation day simply means at the beginning of the school year, how are we reaching all of the students? To set expectations, to set behavioral norms, to convey to all of them that this is what we expect when it comes to positive behaviors and how we are going to try to deter and frown upon and discipline negative behaviors. I think this could be very powerful because you're setting the tone. And it's just so important, as we've learned, to set the tone for students because they need to have a framework in which to operate. I also personally think a lot about honor codes. You don't know me very well, but I'm very big because I'm a criminologist, and some of you will be able to agree, including my panelists. As criminologists, we think a lot about justice and injustice, fairness and unfairness, bias and lack of bias, favoritism and lack of favoritism. We just care so much about justice. So I think with justice comes honor and integrity and character. And so what we see in some schools is an honor code. And many of the students, they abide by the honor code. They hold it on a pedestal. They view it as sacred, and that's wonderful. And this is just one example of a school where they have everyone sign the honor code in front of all the other students. So we sort of tap into sort of general deterrence in terms of the rules. Everyone knows like this is what we're not supposed to do, and hopefully it deters everyone. But we also have this sort of social contract that everyone is agreeing to. I vow to uphold the integrity of this code. I will not lie, cheat, or steal. I will not neglect the actions of those who lie, cheat, or steal. I will treat myself, my peers, my community with the utmost respect. What's also really neat is that you take the pen that you signed the honor code with in front of everyone and you pass it on to the next student, because it serves to demonstrate that we are all in this together. We are a chain. And if we're linked together as a chain, that's what keeps the honor code strong. So I think that's very powerful. Again, tying it into the social contract, tying it into the social connection that we all have. Many times in schools, educators are told that they should be the trusted adult. This is something that's also been studied. Be the trusted adult. That means that students know that they can come to you and they can trust you with any problems they have to share. Now, I think that could be very valuable. I want all adults to be trusted adults. But what I think is even more valuable is if the adults identify themselves not just as trusted adults, but also as askable adults. Askable, meaning, yes, you can ask me anything. I am here and available for you to ask me anything. I know when I was growing up, I was always looking around, trying to figure out which adults I could talk to about heavy stuff, about sensitive stuff, about painful stuff. And if I choose the wrong adult, well, then I know it's going to bite me in the butt. It is going to lead to me being made fun of, or it's going to lead me to not be able to trust anyone, or everyone's going to hear about it, and I'm going to be targeted for more harassment. So I'm looking for an adult, not just that I can trust, but an adult that I can ask questions, because I have so many questions when I'm growing up about who I'm supposed to be, about where I'm supposed to get my validation and my affirmation and my self-esteem from, about what to do with my parents fighting all the time at night, about, oh, I really like this girl, or I really like this boy. How do I deal with my feelings? So I feel like to build a positive school climate, we need an entire school of askable adults. How are we reaching parents? I alluded to this earlier, but the research is very, very clear. We need to make sure that the parents share the same message that the school shares about many of these issues, because otherwise we will not have a united front. And the kids, the students, when they get home, they will think that they can get away with anything. So, I give presentations to parents at schools or online. And to be honest, it's a little bit tricky because the parents who come to these presentations, they are actually the parents who are very, very involved in their kids' lives. And what we would like, of course, is we would like the parents who aren't involved so much in their kids' lives to come to these presentations. But I mean, what can you do? You try to reach whoever you can reach. But we've got to get parents involved. And research also shows that when we send home to parents resources that they can use, hands-on activities, tip sheets, and strategies, that it also helps decrease the frequency of the problem. I also find that anonymous reporting systems are valuable. Students are looking for ways to speak up, to be an upstander instead of a bystander, but they need a safe venue, a safe environment, a safe medium in which to do this. You might know that you can set up Google Voice to set up an anonymous text line or phone call line for students to use. And many students will use it. You might get a few false positives or a few students who just abuse the system, but by and large, most students will use it responsibly, and they will let educators know of what they're seeing, problems, issues online, issues on campus at the school. So we need to make sure that students are able to have an anonymous venue to express their concerns. I'm also big on conveying to students about the need to take screenshots. Hopefully you all know you can take a screenshot on every device pretty much, not just your phone. We all know your phone, but also on a Kindle, also on a PlayStation, on an Xbox. Now, if you're a gamer, you know that, but adults might not know that, and they need to know that. On your iWatch, we can take a screenshot. So screenshots are so valuable when it comes to investigation of this problem. The school needs the digital evidence to do the investigation. Plus, the social media company needs the digital evidence to get that account deleted, to ban that user, to exact some sort of discipline, which hopefully will deter them. We'll see. So that's very important, but also we need to remind all of our students and all of you also, if you ever deal with any abuse, take screen recordings as well, because we need more than just screenshots. If it's a TikTok video, if it's a Snap story, if it's an Insta story, if it's a Facebook story, if it's a live stream on Twitch, if it's a live stream on Instagram, etc. We need the video clip. So hopefully you know on your iPhone or on your Android phone how to record video, how to screen record video. This is so important. Please help me in sharing this message, because without that digital evidence, it's very hard to address a problem. And if the students know that, oh, everyone knows that they're going to be taking recordings, and who cares if they get a warning that someone took a screenshot or someone took a screen recording, they shouldn't have been doing the wrong thing in the first place. Well, then hopefully there's a measure of general deterrence, again, which is helping to reduce the prevalence of the participation in the problem. A couple things before I open it up for questions and answers. When we studied the tweens back in the summer of last year, you can see what they said works to stop this problem. 60%, so 3 out of 5 said, hey, blocking the person was very valuable. So we need to make sure that every student knows how to block on every app. Hopefully it's very easy and user-friendly, but maybe they just don't know. Also, only 30% said that reporting it to the website or app made the cyberbullying stop. That makes me very sad. We need these companies to be very responsive, and hopefully you are seeing that they are becoming more and more responsive, but that number is way too small. We need that to be the majority of times when I reported cyberbullying, the problem went away. That's the success level that we should see. But maybe it's partly due to the students. Maybe if you're only 9 years old, you don't really know how to report. Now you should, or maybe you're scared to report because you think if I report, then this person I'm reporting against will find out that it's me and they will target me heavily. But they need to know that's not how it works. It's all behind the scenes. It's all anonymous. 11% reported it to the school. 50% talked to a parent. 40% ignored the person and it helped. So I think you'll agree with me when I say we would like their solutions to be working much more often. So maybe you can think about research or how we can tap into institutions or organizations or companies to get these numbers to be higher. And then real quick, it's the same sort of story with the teenagers, the middle schoolers and high schoolers. So 6th grade through 12th grade here in America, only 30% said that blocking helped. Only 20% or 19% said ignoring helped. A shocking low 7% or 8% said that reporting it to the website or the app helped. A shockingly low 6% said that the school helped when the school intervened. This is so very depressing. In my opinion, this is unacceptable. Teenagers should be experiencing more success when they are trying different avenues or options to stop cyberbullying. As researchers, as people who care about children, as people who have children, what can we do to increase these numbers so they have more success? Because if they keep struggling, well, maybe it'll start affecting their level of proficiency, and maybe they will only gravitate to certain apps and not other apps. Maybe their development of skills won't be so well-rounded. It'll be very narrow, and maybe that will jeopardize some success in their future somehow. Or maybe they'll just continue to be traumatized when victimization occurs. And more scholars are viewing bullying and cyberbullying through the lens of trauma. I've also blogged about that. I can send you that article. I think this is my last point. I'm a big fan of identity in schools. When I was in high school, so that's 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th grade, I was a Silverhawk. That was our mascot. And so we were told as Silverhawks to engage in behaviors that are representative of a Silverhawk. For example, we were supposed to rise up. We were supposed to soar above like a bird. And what they meant was we just needed to be mature and demonstrate character. You understand, of course. So I think this is very valuable though, because when you tie these behavioral standards into the identity of the school or the mascot, then it helps shape the students' behavior because they want to be tied to something that is successful or winning. And so that can be very valuable. So you want to convey, hey, this is just what the Silverhawks do. This is just what the Trojans do. This is just what the Cardinals do. You know, whatever the mascot could be. We have to move from I shouldn't do that because of the threat of apprehension, detection, punishment, to I wouldn't do that because I'm a Silverhawk, because I'm better than that, because I'm mature, because I want to demonstrate integrity and character. So we have to convey that we're better than that, we're classier than that. And all of this is tied into constant reminders of who we are and what we're all about, what we represent. And so all this can make a difference in, again, promoting school spirit, which, as I mentioned, is a critical element when you're thinking about school climate. I know we covered a lot, and hopefully this has sparked a lot of questions and ideas in your mind. I'm so grateful to the rest of the panel because they do so much work. You all will be doing so much work in many of these areas. We all are co-laborers. We all are working together, linking arms to make a difference. Please reach out to me. You can email me. You can DM me on Twitter. You can find me on the web very easily. I am here to help you, and all the rest of the panelists, I believe they will agree with me when I say that. I will stop sharing my slide. And I believe, Cordelia, I think we will open it up for questions.
Thank you, Samir. You can hear that we are clapping our hands because I think it has been very interesting, very. I have a lot of questions, and I don't know if we have another attendees who wants to make a question. If not, maybe I can. I'm going to start, if you don't mind. Well, I see that you put the focus in all you have spoke about in something like emotional skills. They are so important for kids to copy with different situations of bullying, and you try to improve them through different activities you're presenting. I would like to first to know, what do you think about the role of the family, because you spoke about, of course, the importance of the father's styles, or the authoritative style, the democracy. Okay, we have found when we studied deeply this that we find difference between kids whose father and mother are the same style relative to those who the father is more authoritarian versus authoritative. You know what I mean? This kind of style. So we need, or we are trying to understand the role of the father in this, in the influence in kids about the emotional skills, because we think that not only the mother influence is important, also the father one, the implication of the father in this kind of education. I don't know if you have some opinion about this, or what do you think?
Yes, and again, I don't want to speak outside of my lane because I would need to collect more data on all of this. But I would say, based on my experience, and again, here in America, we have a lot of single parent households. We have grandparents and other guardians raising, so they all have their role. But I do believe that the role of the role of the father is very, very powerful and strong. And some of my fellow criminologists will agree with me when I say that when you look at the population of individuals who are in prison, well, many of them have a very bad relationship with their father. And so what that says to me is that maybe if they had a better relationship with their father, then they would have stayed out of trouble, not just crime, but also deviance. And one form of deviance could be related to bullying and cyberbullying. And so I think there's a powerful influence there. My concern is that maybe the fathers and the mothers, everyone just feels so stressed right now, so burdened in so many ways. And so they have the desire to be a great parent, but it's just incapable. They're just currently, it's just very, very hard because they're struggling financially, maybe because of COVID. They're struggling maybe even in their own mental health, because some of us know how hard parenting is. So I think in a perfect world, we have more community organizations supporting families, supporting moms and dads, but we also have very honest conversations about being vulnerable. Many fathers are hesitant to be vulnerable and say, I am struggling, I need help, because we are told we have to demonstrate masculinity, we have to demonstrate strength and toughness, and we can't demonstrate what could be perceived as weakness in asking for help. So these are some things that come to mind. I welcome the thought of any panelist as well. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. It's a thing concern us because when we try to work with families, as you have told, they always come the same families who are concerned and implicated with the kids, and we need to work with the other one, not only with the mother, who always are attending this kind of thing, but with the father. They are an important figure in this kind of thing. See, thank you, Samir. No sé si tenéis más preguntas, los asistentes, podéis levantar la mano o conectar a través del chat y con la cámara, por favor. Elena, tengo varias. Paloma, ¿tiene una pregunta?
Can I, Elena?
I think you have first question.
So Samir, thank you for your presentation. I have few questions there, or rather comments. I know your work, and it always called my attention, your emphasis on authoritarian schools or authoritative schools. And I always kept thinking, if you have ever explored the possibility that because authoritative schools have less bullying is perhaps because they are hiding it better. Some issues that come up on our research is that 65% of kids do not report what is going on. So advocating for authoritative schools because the research is showing that less bullying happens is perhaps not looking into the nuance of what bullying or what constitutes bullying beyond the simple action of aggression or repetition. And I think that also links with certain techniques that we advocate sometimes on schools that are extremely positive, but sometimes we dismiss what is the reality of the ground, of the daily basis, having to deal with school, parents, teachers, and immense curricula. Teachers are extremely busy people, and sometimes we are putting the burden of what constitutes bullying or to polarize bullying or to become these superheroes, when the reality is that sometimes they are actually the target of bullying. So just to explore the avenue will be super interesting of why if authoritarian or authoritative schools, kids are maneuvering in hiding bullying, both perpetrators and targets. So those are my two comments. Thank you.
I love it. I love what you brought up. I think they're on point. It very well could be that, in these authoritative schools, it's behind the scenes or it's hidden in some way or not being reported, or the administrators themselves are sort of pushing it down or neglecting it in some way. I have personally never thought of that, so I appreciate you bringing that to my attention. And then when it comes to teachers, like you said, they're so overextended. I worry about their mental health because, like you said, now they're seemingly supposed to police the behavior of students when truly they should be focused on the educational components, the lesson plan, the curriculum of math or English or Spanish or whatever it is that they're doing. So it's troubling, and we need to devote more attention to this. Thank you.
If I could just make a comment, just building on the discussion between Paloma and Samir, Cordelia, would that be all right?
We have a question from Elena Garcia, and after I give you the floor.
Sorry,
Maria.
Cordelia.
Don't worry. Elena, would you like to ask something?
Yes. Well,
Hello.
do you hear me? Can
We
you
can
hear
hear
me?
you. Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Thank you. So, well, I was wondering, I've done certain researches, and I always find it very difficult to translate the research done in the United States or in the UK to the Spanish situation and knowledge, because I find there are the systems are so very different that it's very difficult to translate the information we gathered in one region to the situation we have in another region. So I was wondering whether those how to say it, this information, this kind of research would translate well to Spain or to other regions different from those where we've gathered the information. Because I mean, it's interesting. It happened to me when I did a research on sport as a means for preventing social deviation, that I found very interesting studies in the United States and the United Kingdom. But then it was very difficult to translate those results and those understandings of society and of the needs of different groups and different people who were involved to the situation in Spain. So I was wondering whether that's my question. So if
Sure.
if those results, those research could be applied in other regions too.
Thank you very much for your question. I think it's such a great question. I'm of the personal opinion that when it comes to authoritative, authoritarian, and then neglectful and permissive types of schools, I think that, I mean, I want to hear from everyone else, but I think that should apply to other regions, other areas of the world, because we're looking at these two dimensions of, structure and rules and warmth and support. And it feels like those are standard, those are universal. And so I think that that specific research should apply. But when it comes to the initiatives or the ideas or strategies that I shared, you know the schools better than I do, living over here in the United States. So you would be the best determiner or person to be able to say, yes, I think this could work, knowing what I know about the students, or no, I'm sorry, Samir, this won't work. It might work in America, but it's just not going to work over here. So that's what I would just say, that you have to use your experience and your expertise to make those decisions. And my hope is that at least a few will carry over.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, to add on that from the Spanish perspective, I think of most of the things that he mentions. Some of them I found it hard to translate, because some of them, such as prom, we don't do proms here normally. But most of the things that he was appealing to are you can do them in a different way. So, for example, we will have the Hawks that you mentioned that you were a part of, but we will have other things, and that feeling of belonging, you can get through other things. That can be a football team, but we can have cyber mentors as well. In Spain, we had for a long time, there's this program of tutoría entre iguales. I don't know if you know that. That's mentorship between equals, and that applies to the same concepts. Also, the figures are going to be different, but that's just a number. And of course, there are going to be nuances depending on how much, even the word bullying, it's different. In Spanish, we use bullying, but it's different in every language. So there could be some small changes, but I think that there's been a lot of cross-cultural research that has proven that bullying, in a way or another, more prevalent in the physical or in the social verbal way, happens, and that most of these initiatives can be translated into something more close to the reality. But those things that Samir mentioned, most of them, we can do those in the schools. Other thing is that if governments, and also because of the Spanish situation, every autonomous community, it's even different from the whole of Spain. So that makes it really, really hard. Most of the bullying prevention strategies come from universities that we have to translate to those schools that are also linking to those parents that come to to the meetings are the parents that we don't want to address. The same thing happens with the schools. The schools that are more willing to try out our programs are the schools that have a better climate or that would be the most authoritative ones. But I think absolutely Samir's research and Maria, she comes from the UK, and Paloma as well, can be translatable because the underlying principles are most of them are the same.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Manu. That was perfect.
Podéis preguntar en castellano, porque podemos traduciros la pregunta, ¿vale? Tanto yo como Paloma y otros ponentes o Manu, y os podemos facilitar, pues si tenéis alguna duda y preferís hacerlo en castellano, no hay problema. I'm inviting our attendees to ask in Spanish. We can translate them, Samir, if they need. Now I think Maria wants to make also a question, Maria.
Oh, sorry, sorry for interrupting earlier. But it's so great, Paloma, Cordelia, that you put order, and actually the whole flow of communication really builds on, some of the thoughts that I had. Paloma, you raised such a fantastic question about the issue of what are we tapping into really? Is it authoritarian? Is it authoritative? Are we missing out the point? But then again, and on that, I was thinking when we coded the effective elements of bullying prevention programs and we correlated them with reductions of bullying perpetration or victimization, and it's something I'll talk about next. One thing we found is that disciplinary methods were very effective. Those programs that have disciplinary methods, which also overlaps a little bit with classroom rules and other stuff, they were very effective in reducing bullying perpetration, but not victimization. But then again, I'm very skeptical and I'm very careful when I make reference to that issue. And I think it goes back into what Samir and also Manu were saying. Samir talked so beautifully about the issue of school climate. And, sometimes, these labels like disciplinary methods or non-disciplinary methods, it's so hard to capture the actual school climate sometimes. And so, and I say this, and I'm always very concerned about this when I, because as a meta-analyst, you give the wider sort of results, but sometimes if you capture the wider picture, you miss out these nuances, these nuanced findings, which is what Manu said as well about when you talk about, program transportability, right? And whether you can just take something and implement it directly as it is to another program, setting or not. So anyway,
Thank you, María.
Buenas tardes, Samuel tenía una pregunta para hacernos. Samuel Jurado.
Muy buenas, ¿se me oye?
Perfecto, Samuel.
Muy bien, muchas gracias. First of all, I just wanted to thank you so much for your inspiring intervention, Mr. Hinduja. And I wish to know how sports are implemented, or what the importance or the weight that they have in these type of prevention or educational plans.
Thank you for your question, Samuel. I think when it comes to sports, it's another platform. It's another venue in which you have an adult, a supervisory adult, such as a coach or trainers, who have a platform from which to speak about these issues. For example, fostering teamwork, fostering good communication between players. And we, of course, want quality interactions, quality relationships between everyone who makes up a team. And so hopefully what the students are learning in that environment can translate to many other spheres of interaction as well, online, at the school, etc. Sports is I love sports so much. I'm constantly watching sports when I have it on in the background, when I'm working, whatever. And so I see the value of it as just, again, another environment in which we can try to focus in on helping raise our young people with the skill sets, the emotional and social toolbox that they need to succeed.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mr. Hinduja.
So thank you, Samir. Thank you very much for your communication. For us, has been not only interesting, also have give for me at least light in my future research and in my way of work here in our bullying programs. If it's all right, do you think we can go to the next communication? Okay.
Yes.
If you don't mind, I would like before the break to put all the cameras on to make a photograph with the speakers, if you don't like, because here it seems we are alone and we have a lot of people behind the camera. So maybe after we can make a photograph. Okay. So now we go with Paloma. Perfect. Thank you. So we will start with the communication of Paloma. As Fernando Miró have told before, I present her. She's research assistant and postdoctoral researcher for FUSE, is the special program at the National Anti-Bullying Research, the Anti-Bullying Center in Dublin. We are looking forward to hear her, what she wants to share with us. Paloma, when you want.
Okay. Hi, everybody, and thank you for coming here. And thank you, Fernando, Cordelia, and Naikari, a los mandos. I'm doubting if presenting this in English or Spanish. I have created a presentation. He creado una presentación en inglés. So now I'm a little bit confused. I think I'm going to stick with the program. I'm going to present it in English. And if there is any question or that wants to be done in Spanish, I'm more than happy to translate as much as I can. I'm going to share my screen. Just one sec. There we are. Can you see all my presentation? Yeah.
Yes.
So, I suppose FUSE, first and foremost, FUSE is a prevention and intervention program that I am the honor to be a postdoctoral researcher. But the presentation I'm coming today is more, I think it's gonna vary from previous presentation at many levels, in the sense that I'm not alone here. I'm representing all my team and 25 years of research. So I have tried to create an overview of what is FUSE, how a prevention and intervention program come to life in Ireland, and how it's impossible to understand FUSE without thinking in the Irish context, the Irish legislation, the Irish government, and the 25 years of previous research for ABC. So you will see how I'm going to be talking about ABC. I'm going to be talking about our relationship with politics, and I'm going to be talking about how we work and intervene with Irish school community. So when I was preparing this presentation, one of my first thoughts was like, okay, I'm probably working with ABC full-time and indirectly for at least 6 years. But some people has been here before and they have a lot to say. So what I did was I conducted 2 interviews with Mona Umur and with Games. And that gave me such an amazing perspective of what it constitutes to be researching bullying, what it constitutes to intervene in what is bullying, and how much we are shaped for that genealogy, for that how in 25 years the area of bullying researching and bullying intervention has been evolving. I think we have to every now and then look back and see how it has evolved, because at some point there might be things that we need to switch, to change. Anyhow, so FUSE is a project that is the fruit of work developed for more than 25 years for several researchers. And I first asked Mona, and Mona told me that bullying in Ireland it was triggered by the Council of Europe, who held the first seminar on bullying in August 1987. And I think it was particularly important the role of Erling Roland from Norway, who was instrumental in getting the first European seminar of bullying off the ground. And just to get a little bit of perspective, but I think that this is something that is still happening nowadays, is that when those people sat down on the room in Brussels, no, in Strasbourg, the first question that they have to face were, for me is bullying, for you is acoso. What are the nuances of all these words? What exactly does this constitute, right? What bullying is, and what is what we are coming here to talk about. So what was clear, according to Mona, on that seminar is that if anybody in the world of research knew or have some interesting data were the Scandinavians, and it actually was in Norway. So we have the work of Olius, and we have the work of Erling Roland, and they both were presenting very similar results, which basically was the association of bullying with suicide. And whereas Olius was talking about or was implementing this idea of bullying is something that is a repetitive behavior, a power imbalance, and has to be repetitive, I think that Erling Roland was not taking into consideration the idea of repetition. And perhaps I will say that even sometimes the notion of understanding bullying as a repetitive behavior might constrain some other findings and some other avenues that we can start conceptualizing what bullying is and what bullying is not. Perhaps it has fit in certain areas because repetition contributes to, it's an indicator. But sometimes I wonder if it's not an indicator for researchers rather than for people in the ground. But this is a point that we can return later on. So research in Scandinavia, in the UK and the US made its way to Ireland via journalist conference, Human Network. We are talking about 1987. And academics started to show further interest, focusing on the field, and the Irish government started to listen and to invest. So it is important to highlight that at that time in Ireland, bullying was seen as a peripheral problem, only affecting weak children who perhaps needed to tough up. However, inspired by the work of Council of Europe and because of the pressing matter, the Irish government published the first national guidelines on how to tackle bullying in 1993. When we print these guidelines on paper, we are talking about a 5-page document, both sides, which content is rather generic. It protects the victim and somehow has some nuance regarding the perpetrator, borderline criminalizing the perpetrator, because the frame to treat perpetration on bullying was under the codes of behavior and discipline, and those codes of behavior and discipline were quite tough at the time. So 1993 itself, Mona Moore conducted a research to test the effectiveness of those guidelines. And the reality is that the results were quite shocking, not only because it was one of the first properly exploratory research in Ireland looking into what bullying is and how is bullying in Ireland, but because also the constraints of the guidelines didn't fully work in the Irish school environment. So this was a time where Mona decided to set up ABC, and they set up ABC in Trinity College. Something that I found quite remarkable that Mona said to me was, we didn't need to send a press release. We didn't need to let people know that we were here. We were receiving phone calls since day one. We were teachers, principals, parents, and mostly there were emergency calls, like, what do I do? So inevitably, ABC was born with two parallel activities. The first activity was researching, and the second was to become a resource center, where we were providing, where they were providing training to students, with training to teachers, to training to parents, with creating an area to start talking about bullying, right? Mona and the work that it was conducted back then in Ireland, Mona has described it as exciting in the sense that they were all hands off. The entire network that was meeting in the Council of Europe met up in a school in Sligo, which is corner of Ireland, and they were all hands-on. Even the school, the government allowed the school to close 1 day per week. So the schools, parents, teachers, the entire community were talking about bullying. Nowadays, the school has an amazing anti-bullying tradition. So it's a case to be studied because it's one of the earliest intervention programs that have happened around, was in Sligo in Ireland. And Mona will describe this time as incredibly amazing and passionate, and she even say intimate, in the sense that the entire school came together, and the entire school community came together, the village came together to tackle bullying. So something to a note to be reminder there. Following Mona came James O'Higgins Norman, that we all have named or seen at some point in our lives. James commenced to research bullying in 1997. And he made a great point during our interview, and it's that the time that comprehends between 1997 and 2008, it became clear that bullying should be looked from different angles, that there were many windows in which bullying should be looked at. And it is quite interesting because when he was talking about it, I went back to certain research, and it's quite interesting how early research on bullying has almost the notion of power is not well developed, or is still initiating what power means. And sometimes it's even a cartoon, like the image of the big boy who steals the lunch at the playground. And what James noticed is that it was actually Mona, one of the first researchers to start to introduce different variables like gender. So it's something that it seems too normal for us new researchers on bullying. They were trying to find out what is the topic that we are dealing here with, and how are we conforming this topic? Where is all this coming from, right? On that note, James himself ran a groundbreaking study in Ireland about homophobic bullying, no without controversy, because actually even bad press at the beginning, because he was arguing that to understand bullying, we should not only be looking at the psychological experience, but also the culture that enables certain forms of bullying. And talking about homophobic bullying in Ireland in the early 90s, well, the early 2000s was still quite sensitive. So the reality is that this type of research penetrated in the field, and the period that comprehends from 2008 to now, researchers have embraced bullying an open field. We all have opened new fields, right? Racist-based bullying, homophobic bullying, bullying in the workplace, bullying between siblings, just to name few. And we also question the terms of the field, twisting the given notion of what it is or what constitutes bullying fully. It is or is not repetitive behavior? Do we have to be constrained by the idea of repetitive behavior, or should we not? Is racist-based bullying, or is rather an instrument to continue imposing social subordination? Is bullying efficient to continue social subordination? That's it. We are constructing over so many years of research that have given us the freedom to start looking into the nuances and other areas that we can expand and understand deeper and better what we are dealing with. Now, under this new set of complexities, academia is impressing, papers are multiplying. Five-page guidelines for schools is nothing. even we are talking 2008. So we have the online world. And there was this research run in ABC that's found that 1 in 3 Irish teenagers have been bullying offline, and 1 every 10 teenagers were bullying online. So the government needed to do something. And in 2012, the government inaugurated the National Anti-Bullying Forum, which involved a period of consultation and policy making. And the outcome was that what I'm sharing on the screen is the anti-bullying procedures for primary and post-primary school. Now, why these those guidelines are important? In the first place, because it's a 50 very comprehensive document that tackles from a school climate to online to racist-based bullying, to all the nuance and different angles of homophobic bullying. But mostly, and more interesting, is because it is a document that obliges schools to introduce anti-bullying policies in their school. It's legally a requirement in Ireland that every single school develops its own anti-bully policy. So here is where FUSE enters the picture. Now, what I have been trying to say so far is that in Ireland we had a landscape where in a 10 years frame, we have disputing what bullying is. We think it's a very real problem, to in 10 years window grow to the extent that it's compulsory for schools that you have anti-bully policies. 10 years might sound a long time, but for a whole school structure to adapt and to catch up, it's a life. In the sense that you have to transform your culture, you have to transform sometimes even the principles, you have to educate teachers. So the legal requirements that are in Ireland to tackle bullying needed some work, needed some help. So in ABC, what happens was that we started to standardize through FUSE all those phone calls that before were coming to ABC, saying like, how can I do this? How can I do that? So we, because of the legal requirement and the need, FUSE came up as a solution to bring the entire community together. So this is the idea of FUSE. FUSE, the name of FUSE was created by the name of FUSE was it was my manager actually who came up with it. Is the idea of join or blend from a single entity, and the idea was to bring together the same that happened in Sligo, to bring together the entire whole school community. Perhaps too idealistic. The Sligo story was perhaps too innovative, and everybody was hands up. Now we are dealing with thousands of schools, 349 schools, I think we are dealing at the moment. So anyhow, FUSE wanted to start to standardize and to work with the schools firsthand to bring together the legal requirements, to bring together the school community, and to bring together the academia. We were set up in 2018. Officially, we were funded by Facebook and Rethink Ireland. And so far we have run in 2 major programs and a series of workshops that I'm gonna go through later on. So 2018-2019 programs, we tackled 385 school staff members, 398 parents. The radio is always, Cordelia, you mentioned this before, parents are the most difficult group to tackle when you want to bring people. And then 1,622 students, which for FUSE are at the center of everything we do, and we don't do anything without considering the student or consulting the student on what to do. And actually that links with your presentation, Samir, because we are on the process of setting up a youth council so that we can get informed from them exactly how to tackle certain things. So we ran a survey, and those were the results. So 86% of the students that ran through FUSE program say that they will know who to ask for help to tackle online and safety, to tackle online cyberbullying. 84 say they are more confident in their ability to notice when someone was trying to harass them or bullying them. And 81 said that they are more confident in the ability to speak out when bullying happens. The 2020-21 program was slightly different. We were running in between, ADC was running a certain level of research. And that's why I was before asking this question of what if actually what happened is that students do not report. And for us, it's quite evident that students do not report. They are aware, but they do not report when they happen to them. 65% of bullying victims do not report. So we tried to find out why they do not report. Fear of retaliation, confidence in their teacher ability. It's not that they don't have their favorite adult. It's that, for instance, in Ireland, racist-based bullying, when it happens to a Black student, as it has happened before, they didn't find representation in the school to actually talk about their problem or the reason why they were being bullied, which was racist-based. They simply didn't have enough representation to trust the ability of the teacher to actually understand what was going on. And then also the issue of safety emerged. So reporting is always a hot potato because FUSE embrace a lot the no blame approach. And we are extremely concerned about safety. Plus, we have to consider that even the 2013 anti-bullying policies, the guidelines to tackle bullying in primary and post-primary, what we have to think is that it emerged from another set of legislation, which is the Children Act. So legally, we are heavily advised to put the children at the center. So you cannot force anybody to report bullying. You have to encourage them. So we put a lot of thought in FUSE on how do we mobilize children students to report bullying, and what is the best way for them to report bullying. So our program was organized, perhaps this slide should go afterwards. So this is what we did. We created a program that is based in the classic test of Delaney and Letane about emergency and diffusion of responsibility. If you are familiar with these theories from 1972, so those two researchers were finding out why people do not intervene in situations of emergency, and they come up with the idea of diffusion of responsibility. You rather wait for somebody to act, or you don't think you have some of the secondary findings. I found actually the book, it took me years, but I found it, the original book. The secondary finding is that the majority of the times they don't feel they have the skills to intervene. So it was like, all right. So what we can do from here? That we put the students at the center and that we encourage them to report. We break up the program based on this study. We break up the program in a 5-step program, which is noticing. The first workshop is all about noticing when bullies happen. And we look to both, to every people involved. We look into if the student should recognize if he or she is the bully, is the perpetrator. We show to recognize if you are being the target. We show to recognize if you are a bystander and what type of bystander you are, and what is your role in all that. So we actually focus on noticing bullying when it happens, because even some of the research is saying is identifying exactly what is bullying. Social relational bullying sometimes is very difficult to name. To name bullying is difficult. To say like, those girls are being mean with me or they are talking on my back might not be considered bullying. Well, it is bullying. So to learn, to teach them to notice, to identify what is going on was one of the first starting points to continue with the program. To understand that not only you have to name it, but you cannot ignore it. It's something that you don't need in your life was our second workshop. Taking personal responsibility. That was a little bit difficult for me to actually establish, and I had a lot of talks at the office because I was always thinking, should we actually put the burden on the student? But come here, I'm from sociology and my colleagues are from psychology, and they made me understand why it is important actually to say like, yes, they have to take their personal responsibility since very early age. It's not a bad thing, Paloma, relax. So we include the workshop of taking in personal responsibility. And then the two key workshops for mobilizing to reporting is knowing what to do and action plan. So basically, everybody that has worked in emergency programs, anybody that has worked close to any emergency or first aid response, you know that you cannot react, you have to respond. But in order to respond, you have to have the skills, or somebody has told you before, how do you have to respond? So what we did was to create a plan where the students organized their own reporting mechanism. Per class, per school, the scale is completely up to them. We mobilized, we were talking with principals to introduce the reporting mechanism in their school, depending on the volume of the class, depending on the school. We have at FUSE, we have 2 school coordinators who are constantly dealing with the schools. So they are up to the case of what is school or what is the nature of each school on the program, but mostly our idea was that reporting mechanism that only students have created is included in the bullying and the anti-bullying policy. And if they have to renew it every year, well, you do, because students change and their needs change, but they have the ones that have to come up with their own reporting mechanism. We have 4 phases of research. One was school recruitment. We have the teacher training. We train teachers, and then teachers implement the program. And then we run a pop survey where we measure confidence in the ability for students. We didn't do it alone. We have been creating a series of characters, attending to socio-demographic reality in Ireland at the moment, but also attending to representation. Migration in Ireland is a rather new phenomenon where second generation of migrants are starting to, they haven't reached university yet. They are mostly in primary and post-primary. So we realized that representation is a massive issue. So we try to create a series of characters that represent, but also present the potential to show that this is also how Ireland is going to be. To choose the character was full-time work. Other workshops that we run and activities that we run in parallel to the programs that we are running is, we are running a hate speech module, image sharing module, school climate module. Thank you, Samir, for that. It's a lot of based on your work. Self-esteem. Then we partnership with other institutions like WebWise, which is mostly looking into online safety. and Yellow Flag, a Roma-based community that have a 8-step program to tackle racist-based bullying, particularly within the traveler community in Ireland. Then we are ideating this idea of a youth council, and also because it is time to review policies, we are creating a battery. We are on the process. The youth council and the battery of indicators is two of our still on the oven going on, see how we are organizing it. But battery of indicators I'm pretty fond of, because what we are trying is to, if so far the government has been imposing rules of how to tackle bullying, even it has been through academia, and even when there has been public consultations, it is time perhaps to schools to inform the government. So we are creating, we are thinking on creating this battery of indicators. Our idea is that schools are capable of inform on the school policies through a self-assessment tool. We also find out during COVID that there is very little child-friendly online surveys, close to none, that are short and that go to the point. So we created one. The survey is made, those guys I'm showing to you now are running the survey themselves. It's dedicated to primary and post-primary, but mostly primary. And it's based on an instrument that has been validated before by a German collaborator of ABC. And then, of course, COVID arrived in our second program. And even when we have certain reporting mechanisms and we have good results, not all schools have completed the program. We are waiting to complete the program, and we are supporting the schools through this period of time. So one of the things that we did, and that was Tijana Milosevic and Derek, we were ABC, and when I say we, I wasn't personally involved, but I have bring some of the data to you, is the number of how COVID has affected the correlation between COVID and cyberbullying. So you have the data in there. 28% between 10 to 18 years old experienced cyberbullying victimization during lockdown. 50% reported to have seen others being cyberbullying during lockdown. The younger in age, the more likely to have experienced cyberbullying. Significant increase on male experience frequent cyberbullying during lockdown. And then the majority, the app that was more used was WhatsApp. So overall, obviously we still need to get the use of this data because it's quite raw, but there is a clear increase of cyberbullying detected across platforms during lockdown. That helped us out to reinforce the program, go back, review the program, and some of the modules or some of the areas that were adapted for offline and online to reinforce the idea of online. So what I have brought today to you, I hope, is a very long overview of how FUSE come to be, trying to transmit that we don't work in vacuum, that there is a whole tradition of what bullying is, of bullying research, that there is still in this genealogy of bullying researching, some areas need to still be revisited, perhaps, twisted. And the FUSE is the result of those 25 years of research. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We will start with the question. La ronda de preguntas está abierta. Podéis preguntar en castellano, ¿vale? Si queréis. Yo también tengo un montón. I have a lot of questions also, but I can't wait to the other attendees. But I really, Paloma, Me da mucha envidia el apoyo que tenéis por parte del gobierno para abordar, porque la sensación es que vais al unísono desde el centro anti-bullying, desde la universidad, la academia y la iniciativa política. Y claro, esto facilita mucho que alcancéis pues muchos objetivos en muchos centros, que no se queden determinados centros o aspectos por ver.
No, y de hecho hay una cosa que a mí me ha llamado mucho la atención. En Irlanda acaban de hacer avanzar lo que se llama Coco Law, que trata de regular el acoso online. Entonces el Ministerio de Justicia nos acaba de dar funding para crear un observatorio de la Coco Law. Quieren ver cuál es la respuesta. De hecho, están buscando un postdoctorado y es una investigación cualitativa. Así que si alguien en la audiencia quiere aplicar, creo que ya está publicada, sí, porque lo compartí el otro día. Vamos a... Es curioso, ¿verdad? Cuando lo comparas con el caso en España, pero también creo que tiene que ver por una cuestión de que es un país de 4 millones de personas. Y la escuela está relativamente... La estructura escolar es diferente también. Hay muchas más escuelas privadas. Pero aún así, la ley es obligatoria para todos. La procedures es para privadas y públicas. Y se dan casos muy excepcionales en las privadas. De hecho, a mí me gustaría llevar a cabo una investigación para comparar, porque cómo se manifiestan ciertas agresiones no es lo mismo en la privada que en la pública.
Nosotros hemos analizado y hemos observado más agresiones de tipo verbal y social, ¿no? Como podéis imaginar, que física. El número de... I don't know if maybe for Maria and Samir we are talking about the difference between the kind of bullying in private and public centers. Paloma said it's very interesting to know if we have different. And we have observed some difference in the quality of the aggression, more social and psychological, versus in the public school, maybe are more physical. I don't know if you have this kind of experience also, because it's very interesting, like Paloma said.
I think because I am really more into meta-analytic reviews, I think it would only be fair to leave Samir, who does the real work in the field, like Paloma and Manu, to answer this question. But you do raise such an amazing question, because, you know, sometimes I get so frustrated. Now we write a paper about comparing the effectiveness of bullying prevention programs based on self-reported data or teacher-reported data and peer-reported data, and the results are already beginning to look very, very interesting. And quite often I think, how would results vary if we actually had sufficient information on different forms of bullying behavior? But I think I will leave the experts to give the answer on that. Samir and Manu and Paloma.
Maybe Manu has the answer, because I don't think that I do. I do think it's interesting to think about the distinction, or the possible distinction, between public and private. If I'm just brainstorming with you all and speculating, I feel like the same root issues that incline someone to be aggressive would stand regardless of whether it's public or private. I feel like at that point, when cognitively and emotionally they've crossed the line and they want to be hurtful towards another person, I don't know if most of the time they're going to be calm and reasonable and rational and evaluate how public or how private the situation is before they act. Now, as adults, I think we would, because we think about colleagues and we think about when something stern might need to be said and how we should take that person aside and express our personal viewpoint privately, because that's the mature thing to do. But when it comes to youth and their level of maturity, I wonder if they're slowing down enough to think that through. Manu? Paloma?
I think, you see, like, I'm a little bit of James' school, in the sense that we can know disentangle bullying behavior from the culture that surrounds. Actually, the latest UNESCO work is moving from whole school approach to whole education approach. And what education entitles or traps is the idea of society, right? So perhaps when we talk about private and public, we are talking about class.
Yeah.
And the problem and the issue is that we know that bullying can be a very efficient strategy to dominate people. So I will be looking into that, you know, like how subtle bullying can be to dominate people and sustain certain privileges.
Mm-hmm.
As a sociologist, I wouldn't think it's only back to individual, which is it's we can have the thought that is our ultimate decision, but society and certain people are pushed to behave in a particular way. So
Can I ask you, and Paloma and Samia, though, I was wondering with regards to the individual level, if you like, and forgive my ignorance, you guys, and Manu, as a psychologist, I don't know what your opinion is about this, and also Cordelia. I mean, in a relatively recent systematic review we did, it was in 2018-19, we, on the associations between bullying perpetration, victimization with empathy and callous and emotional traits, because we use cross-sectional data and we had many studies where we were able to separate out the pure bullies and the pure victims and the bully victims. And for callous and emotional traits, it was 100% obvious how those who score so high on callous and emotionality were the pure bullies. Those kids who said, I'm just the one who victimizes other kids, I'm not being victimized, which is a smaller fraction compared to those who are pure victims or bully victims being the largest. So I always find it interesting because you guys do the real work. What is it that enables those kids to cross the line and to say, I don't give a toss, I don't care if it's in the private sphere or the public sphere? Is it a combination of school culture added with, you know, all the stuff that always would say about psychopathy? What is it? I really don't know where to place the emphasis, to be honest. So I'm really sorry for my honest questions.
It's a great question. I wouldn't know where to start. Linking to the previous question about public and private schools, I think that's a matter of just a name, and there are many other things surrounding that. Particularly linking to the Basque Country, where I'm from, what I see is that there are very, very good public schools where there is a whole feeling of community, and even the teachers are proud to be in those schools. It's the school that every teacher, when he's studying here at the Faculty of Education, is aiming for. And those schools are public, but they are top notch. And there is, as Paloma mentioned, it can be related to class. Other schools, if you found them so in a more marginal area, so to speak, even that we don't have a very high difference between low class. We're in the place that I come from, everything is medium high, medium low. We don't have very big socioeconomic status differences, but even so, you can notice that some schools are the teachers are just transitioning through those schools, so they will leave the school at the middle of the semester because they had they got a call to make a substitution in another school. So I know that there are differences, but those differences, it's not a matter of public or private. It's a matter almost always of funding and that feeling of belongingness that we were talking about. So if the kids feel that they are going to have this teacher for 3 months and then he or she is going to leave, so they don't have this auto trust. And I think that's something that it's in the surrounding, in the ambient, so to speak, of the center itself. So public versus private, we are always going to find differences, but just because there are so many things around that, socioeconomic status, confidence, climate, those all variables that Samir mentioned before are going to be linked somehow. So yeah, I think I wouldn't say it's pointless, but I think it's just a cluster of many other things that we can work on, or that we should aim for. And I don't know if I feel capable to responding to your question, Maria. That's a very, very interesting question. I was going to talk about the difference between pure bullies, pure victims, and cyber victims. That's a nuance that it's not often made. I think that we also have to take into account that these programs should be aimed for every student. So that includes bullies as well, because we don't always have to work. I mean, we always have to work with the victim, but sometimes we go too far to protect the victim, and we forget that it's not should be the only one that we work with, and therefore we have to work also with bullies. And those programs should definitely, I mean, I was touch some of these things that you probably know from those meta-analyses, that empathy has to be worked on, emotional regulation has to be worked on, but that's something that it's completely neglected in the school curriculum overall. So they know and they learn many things, but they don't learn how to regulate their emotions. So that's something that we can do through programs.
I would love to say something about
Go ahead.
Fuse. We have in Fuse, actually, we do have one of the workshops is totally working on empathy and relationships. So this is something I'm very proud of, because you can actually see the response of students to those particular workshops. And something that we are doing in Fuse is we have included the program in the SPHE curricula, which is compulsory. Mm-hmm. So something there that I think I should bring up. You see, I'm representing my entire team, so I think that every time I have the opportunity to talk about what they are doing, I think I have to bring it up. Yeah.
Tenemos una pregunta de Samuel Jurado. Si quieres, Samuel, adelante.
Muchas gracias. Nada, Paloma, agradecerte por la intervención, porque ha sido muy interesante. Y a ver, yo me he fijado en que nos has comentado el porcentaje de ciberbullying en caso de chicos, ¿vale? De niños. Entonces, también quería saber un poco en cuanto al porcentaje de incidencia en ciberbullying en caso de chicas, ¿no? Y porque entiendo que se ha destacado este dato en chicos justamente porque era, bueno, pues era destacable, era notable, ¿no? La diferencia en incidencia según sexo. Y también quería saber si había una diferencia notable en la tipología o el modus operandi utilizado.
Sí. Por ejemplo, nos dimos cuenta de que había un aumento en identity-based bullying, particularmente en identity-based bullying. Lo que puedo hacer, Samuel, es, porque la investigación no la llevé yo, la llevó mi compañera Tijana Milosevic, y todavía estamos rompiendo data, entonces, breaking data, rompiendo data. Lo que sí que puedo hacer es enviar los resultados. Yo sé que el informe se está haciendo ahora mismo y te puedo pasar todos y cada uno de los detalles de la investigación. No los tengo todos a mano. Yo recuperé algunos que me parecieron significantes y que nos parecieron significantes para Fuse. Y quizá quisimos hacer ver que había un tipo de male-based bullying aumentando, porque tradicionalmente ese número nos aparecía female. Entonces, bueno, se introdujo también para nosotros, para tenerlo en cuenta. Pero no podría ahora mismo, from the top of my head, el darte los datos específicos. Te envío el reporte en cuanto salga.
Quedaría muy agradecido. Muchas gracias.
Gracias, Samuel.
Muchas gracias, Paloma. Tenemos también una pregunta de Elena García. No sé si estás por aquí.
Hola, Elena.
Adelante.
Do you think our present political environment, populist rising and devaluation... ¿Sí, Elena?
¿Sí, ¿me oís?
Te oímos.
Sí.
Okay, so...
Vas.
Yo creo que está congelado, ¿eh?
Sí.
Sí, lee la pregunta mejor. Paloma igual puede oír y no puede hablar.
Do you think our present political environment, populism rising, and the evaluation of...
I was thinking maybe that political environment could be a cause for the rising on bullying and cyberbullying and all these kinds of things.
As a sociologist, I'm gonna say yes. I think that something that we have to be looking into the definition of bullying that we are using is exactly what constitutes power relation. And what is the scope of that power relation? I know that people perhaps people in psychology field are gonna say like, but as a sociologist, I will say that power relations construct certain form of knowledge. And I think that based on that knowledge, certain level of aggression can happen to groups of people. So I wouldn't be strange, it wouldn't be strange for me to see the rise of hate speech bullying. Mm-hmm. Hate speech on itself is a form of discriminating and perpetuating social subordination. The fact that we are going to be seeing that repetitively to actually start to undermine identities is something that I wouldn't take out of the picture. Mm-hmm. The feeling I'm gathering now from your question is yes. A very interesting question, by the way. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I agree with Paloma. I think we've seen a rise in bias-based aggression and cyber hate, and there are studies showing that this group led by Sebastian Walsh. I think Samir works closely with him. Mm-hmm. Probably Paloma, you do as well in the ABC that you were mentioning. And I think that particularly, I think it's because they learn by seeing how adults do things, and the thing is that you have hate all over Twitter. I don't know if you are in Twitter, and you see that everything is a shit firestorm, they call it, and also we have slut shaming and fanatism, and that's what they learn. So if they see their parents or adults or any adults or even footballers or people that they are married to, I think something that we should be looking at in the closer future is how influencers shape the opinion of children and adolescents, because until now I think we had peers and we had parents, and now we have peer parents and influencers. There are certain influencers, particularly in Spain. If I mention Ibai Llanos, I think everybody will know him, and it's someone that has a big power into adolescence. It's almost like a friend that it's not there, but you know all about him, how he thinks, and therefore how he thinks shapes their behavior. And that closely relates to the theory of blind behavior that probably every criminologist knows here. So how the other things, that if aggression is valid or why should we use violence or aggression, I think probably that's going to be in the rise in the next few years. I would not dare to say that, but it's my hypothesis.
If I could join as a person who lives in the UK, because the question is particularly relevant for the UK following Brexit. It was all about we own, and I say this as a person with a dual citizenship, the populist discussions around the issue of Brexit. We own our own country, the horrible, and I was so fascinated when you were talking about the ethnic minority groups, Paloma, because, you know, all these issues, they were so obvious in behind the scenes in all the discussions around the issue of Brexit. And for those who come from South America, Latin America, and probably wouldn't know, the UK left the European Union, and the whole discussion around it was a very populist rhetoric-based discussion around how, we need to, British people are superior and we are the best, and we need to leave this, this group which doesn't represent our identity and we don't identify with. And I tell people, this is the time for the best sort of publication on time trends analysis and increases or decreases of hate crime and, racist bullying pre and post Brexit, because everybody talks about how these forms of behaviors have skyrocketed since, the Brexit. And it would be really nice if somebody, I wish I had the time to do it, I don't, but if anyone is interested in collaborating or point towards the other potential collaborators, I mean, it would be like a natural experiment, the pre-post Brexit, trends in, in hate crime and racist bullying, which is so relevant.
I would love to ask to the audience, actually, all of the people that is based in South America, because we are talking here, and I think that to a certain extent is so European based that, well, American as well, but South America, what are your experiences on that particular topic? I would love to hear the audience to see the people that is not based in Europe or North America. What are your experiences in your studies? What is what you are doing? What type of things are you dealing with?
I think there are people from Peru and from Argentina, but I don't know if they now are connecting and they can share with us their experience. Would be very interesting. While they are deciding if they want to participate, I would like to know, Paloma, because when I read the last meta-analysis, Maria, I saw that there are a difference in ages between the effect of the prevention programs. I think the 13 years old seems to be the best age to make the prevention programs, the bullying prevention programs. And I don't know which is your experience, because you work with primary and post-primary, you work in a big range of ages.
Ask me this question in 2 years. because the thing is, ouch, that was a punch. Yes,
Paloma, I told you, excuse me, because we work with primary school because we think that it's better to work soon, before the behaviors start. But I have read the meta-analysis. Maria told that they found that the best age or the best moment is with 13 years old. And it's, for me, has made me think why this could be.
Can I, sorry to butt in. Sorry, Maria. I just wanted to point out that I think we should take into account if we are aiming for prevention or intervention. So if the problem is already there, it's too late to prevent it. So you are aiming at intervening at something, so to reduce something. When you try to prevent something, you should always aim with appropriate content for those ages. I read that meta-analysis too, and for example, our program focuses more on the last year of primary education here in Spain, which would be about 10 to 13 years old. So that's from sexto de primaria, 6th grade, to the second of compulsory education. And I think the key there is depending on what you're trying to prevent. So bullying happens from preschool education almost, or at least you have some kind of aggression. Linking to what Paloma said before, we may not call it bullying because of the asymmetry of power or the repetition, but there's certainly peer aggression that is repeated against a victim done by a group and such. So to prevent bullying, probably we are too late if we start from secondary education. We are more intervening at that. But if we talk about cyberbullying, then that's a different story, because then we enter the thing about technology. But what we are seeing is that technology penetrates our life earlier and earlier. So the same thing holds true. So you're not gonna prevent the maluse or using the technology in a bad way. If they already have a mobile phone, you are going to intervene in how they already used it. But sorry, Maria, to interrupt.
I'm so, the point you made, Manu, the distinction between prevention and intervention is so excellent. And quite often we talk about anti-bullying programs, and I think we make two mistakes. Firstly, we sometimes use interchangeably. They use the concept of prevention versus intervention. We use it interchangeably, even though we shouldn't. And that's the first point. The second point, however, is that sometimes we do it out of necessity, in the sense that, any sort of school-based programs, they don't just pop out like mushrooms out of the blue. We sometimes forget that in real life, these schools, like my neighborhood, my childhood school, now that I'm currently in my home country, I was born in that. The school existed like 30 years before I was born, and it will exist, for my children and grandchildren. And, maybe in the 80s, they were running programs on this topic because it was a hot topic. And then, the ministries of different educations, every now and then they change their priorities. And we forget that, depending on local council funding, priorities set out by the ministries of education, and so many other things, every now and then, every 2, 3, 4, 5 years, we implement a new program. And, this other program has already been running, which goes into what Samir and Paloma were also saying about the culture and the ethos, and how, you need to see all these things, but, not in fragments of time, but, So I'm sorry. I'm not sure if what the points I'm making are clear, but also, Cordelia, I should say the results you mentioned are based on the paper, the 2011 paper, I think, on the effective elements of bullying prevention programs, right, where we did analysis based on age effects, and now we're trying to update those. Or which of the papers are you talking about? Because now
I think the last one you sent me, Maria, the last one now, that
was those were more rough analysis, because now we are doing the one for the Samir journal,
yes.
as I call it.
Yes, that one. I think it's that one. Yes.
Yeah. Now, no, you have a good point there. Now we're doing more sensitive analysis based on when you look into, in order to do the meta-analysis, you have to put some cutoff points to ensure that you make some more meaningful analysis. But sometimes these cutoff points may end up being a bit rough. So now that we're writing more methodological papers on, on the methodological components of anti-bullying programs rather than the elements of the actual programs, we're doing more sensitive analysis. So we're hoping to update this. One of the results could relate to the fact that, sometimes these ages like 12, 13 could reflect transitions, not only from primary to secondary, but I think primarily more nuanced transitions in identity from a psychological perspective for youngsters, because, a child at the age of 11 or 12, I know that, it may sound ridiculous. What's the difference between age 11, 12 or 13, 14? But I think there is, when it comes to the psychological identities of these kids and how sensitive they are into understanding and having awareness of some issues. I think these are important ages, but I could be wrong. This may be explaining the result, but, every meta-analytic result should be treated with caution.
I thought in that way, Maria. I thought the same that you, for the reason of the development of the identity. I think it's an important age, yes. And I thought in that way, but I want to contrast, because in my opinion, as Manu said, I thought the prevention program must be 10 years old, 11, because they aren't still violent behaviors. But it's real. When we work with a small child, they have more difficult to learn these emotional skills, with short session. We need more time. Maybe with the older one, it's easier for us because they are much more receptive to this kind of skill, emotional skill. I'm talking about empathy, as you told, self-regulation. Maybe it's interesting.
Maybe they understand that easier or more easily, but they are less willing to change. So the older you get, I think the less willing to change you are, because you already know what works for you or what doesn't. So if aggression has worked for you in the past and you've seen that gave you a status, it's not already too late, but it's going to be harder to make that change. Instead, if you start from scratch, from the 5th grade, and I know that we have to do all the work on teaching them how they should regulate, what does it feel to know what you're feeling and what to do with that and how to behave. That takes time, but it's the time where it's effective, because sometimes with 14 years, it can be already too late. And as Maria was mentioning, that age gap, it's huge in terms of development. That you're reaching adolescence, so everything changes in those years. And for girls, normally it happens earlier, but between those ages, there are going to be huge changes. So that's a very important age, of course.
Thank you to all of you. I don't know if we have more question or opinion.
I have a question for Paloma, if that's okay. I'm sorry, I don't mean to. It's terrible. It's also we monopolize discussion. The presenters. Maybe I should just shut my mouth and see if you have a question.
You have to hear your question.
Paloma, what you said about these ethnic groups and migrants is so fascinating, and I wanted to hear more. I wanted to hear your perspective about, because you're doing the real work with views on these, on these groups, and I am so curious about how you guys manage to actually encourage children from migrant backgrounds to actually join and feel included in the school, because in a meta-analysis we did, primarily Sara Valdebenito, a good collaborator, on the effectiveness of programs to reduce school exclusion. One of the findings that was very obvious from the primary studies was the issue of ethnic minority groups and migrant kids, and the fact that they are the ones who are usually not just bullied, but they're also extremely aggressive, and they're the ones who are usually who are very likely to be excluded from school, to face other harsh disciplinary measures. And these are the kids you need to work with. And what is your experience from the Fuse program on this? How to get them involved and how to help them, especially the aggressive.
No. Who do you think are the kids that we have to work with? The minority?
Ethnic minority. You mentioned
your data.
Sorry.
No, we don't have data pointing out that minority groups are the perpetrators.
Right.
What we have is that they are the targets.
Right.
And they have been the targets. Depends of the area that you are researching and the variable. Last summer, there was one particular case where the school was segregating kids.
Right.
Segregating kids. And that created a certain imbalance, and that it turned out quite bad. So we don't have particular data. It's interesting, because I think that the relationship I have actually with groups that we can be considered, that they consider themselves minorities, is a fight for identity. There is this quite interesting movement called Black and Irish, right? Black and Irish, second generation of migrants whose parents are mostly from Africa, and they speak with an Irish accent. So there is this interesting, super interesting, well-articulated discourse penetrating in Ireland of the culture should not be as monolithic as we think Ireland is. Let's get rid of the idea of the leprechaun. Actually, Ireland is way more diverse. Now, to respond to your particular question, I think that Ireland had a previous tradition that does not relate with migration, which is the discrimination of traveler movements, or Roma. And Yellow Flag developed an 8-state program, but they are actually dealing with diversity and inclusion. And they have a quite integral whole school approach where they talk with the community, they talk with the parents. It's quite intense, quite hands-on. It's not only we developed the program, we included on the SPHE. It's not as structural as FUSE will be. It's more NGO based because it is coming from Papi Point, which is an NGO for the Roma community, so for the traveler community. So they work a lot in terms of empathy, and they work a lot in cultural and mutual recognition. The program is quite intense. I highly recommend you, if you are interested on the issue, to look into. But I think that this idea that we tend to have to look at minority groups as the perpetrators is slightly dangerous.
Yeah.
It's slightly dangerous on itself, is racializing. So what we do sometimes with research is dangerous in that sense. I wouldn't be that clear. Actually, Seth, one of our colleagues, has run a very interesting research about what is the racial imbalance in classes and how Black communities have bullying against white communities, and the other way around, depending of the number that you have in the school. What's
the name? Sorry.
Seth. Can you believe I don't remember his surname now? Is our colleague.
I'll follow up with you. It's fine. Sorry.
Yeah, I'll send you the chapter. He has.
Yes.
I think Paloma's connection broke out, or it's me.
It's a chapter with James about race-based bullying. Sorry, my internet connection is quite unstable.
Se ha cortado. Okay. So. Okay. Thank you, Samir. Thank you.